What if your entire world was smaller than Central Park, and leaving meant crossing hundreds of miles of open ocean? Scattered across Earth's vast oceans are islands where time moves differently. Some tribes have never seen the modern world, while others use 12-foot stone discs as currency. From the Sentinelese, who have rejected all contact for millennia, to the Yapese, with their ancient banking system carved from limestone, these island communities didn't just survive in isolation. They created entire civilizations surrounded by nothing but water. Each island tells a different story of human adaptation. Mentawai. Deep in the emerald heart of the Indian Ocean, where Siberut Island rises from turquoise depths like a forgotten Eden, the Mentawai people live as their ancestors have for countless generations. Their world is one of shadow and light, where ancient rainforests meet coral shores, and where every tree, every stream, every creature pulses with sacred meaning. Here, in wooden longhouses that breathe with the forest extended, families gather around fires that have burned for centuries. The walls are carved with spirits, the air thick with wisdom passed down through generations like precious heirlooms. Children learn not from books, but from the whispered teachings of shamans who speak directly to the soul of the jungle. The Mentawai do not simply live in nature, they are nature. Their bodies tell stories through sacred tattoos, each line and curve a chapter in their spiritual biography. Ink made from sugar, palm, and soot marks not just their skin, but their belonging to a world where human and forest are one indivisible whole. They sharpen their teeth to points, believing it brings them closer to the spirits. They hunt with poison arrows, not for sport, but for survival woven into ceremony. Their shamans, the Sikere, journey between worlds, healing not just bodies, but the invisible threads that bind community to cosmos. But the modern world presses against their shores. Logging companies eye their sacred groves. Tourism brings cameras and curiosity, but also the slow erosion of mystery. Some young Mentawai drift toward the cities, trading forest wisdom for concrete promises. Yet in the depths of Siberut, where the canopy filters sunlight into cathedral beams, the old ways persist. Because for the Mentawai, tradition is not a choice, it is breath itself, flowing through them as naturally as the rivers that wind through their island home. Nicobarese. In the azure waters of the Bay of Bengal, where monsoon clouds gather like ancestral spirits, the Nicobar Islands rise from the depths like emerald crowns. Here, the Nicobarese people have crafted a life of profound simplicity, where palm fronds whisper secrets and coral reefs guard ancient wisdom. Their villages cluster beneath coconut groves, houses raised on stilts like offerings to the sky. The Nicobarese live with the rhythms of wind and rain, planting by moonlight, fishing by starlight, marking seasons not by calendars, but by the migration of birds and the flowering of trees. Each island in their chain, Car Nicobar, Great Nicobar, Little Nicobar, pulses with its own dialect, its own stories. Yet all share the same reverence for the sea that cradles them, the forests that shelter them, the ancestors who guide them through dreams and ceremony. Their boats, carved from single trees, glide across lagoons like prayers in motion. The Nicobarese do not conquer the sea, they dance with it, reading its moods, respecting its power, taking only what they need and giving back through ritual and restraint. But history has tested them. The 2004 tsunami swept across their islands like a judgment, reshaping not just coastlines but souls. Some communities vanished entirely, their voices silenced by waves that towered like moving mountains. Those who survived carry the ocean's fury in their memories, balanced against its daily gifts of fish and calm. Government programs promise development roads, schools, hospitals. Yet many Nicobarese understand that progress can be another kind of wave, one that erases as much as it builds. They navigate between preservation and change, honoring their children's futures while protecting their ancestors' dreams. In the evening light, when fishing boats return with the day's catch and cooking fires bloom like stars across the villages, the Nicobarese continue their ancient dialogue with the sea, speaking in the language of gratitude, listening for the wisdom that only islands can teach. Andamanese. In the heart of the Andaman Sea, where time itself seems to pool in forgotten eddies, live the Andamanese peoples so ancient their stories begin before memory itself. The Ong, the Jawa, and the legendary Sentinelese exist as living links to humanity's deepest past, their lives unmarked by the rushing centuries that have transformed the world beyond their shores. Here, on islands wrapped in pristine beaches and impenetrable forests, hunter-gatherers still track wild pigs through morning mist. They still kindle fire with friction and patience, still read the jungle like a sacred text written in leaf and shadow. Their knowledge runs deeper than archaeology, older than history. It flows through them like ancient rivers finding the sea. The Ong glide through their island home with the quiet confidence of people who belong completely to their place. Their shelters are temporary, their possessions few, their connection to the land absolute. They do not own the forest, they are owned by it, claimed by it, transformed daily by its living presence. The Jawa, contacted only recently in the span of their existence, move between worlds with careful steps. Some embrace the offerings of the outside world, clothes, tools, medical care. Others retreat deeper into the green embrace of trees that have sheltered their people since the ice retreated and the seas rose. And then there are the Sentinelese, guardians of North Sentinel Island, who have chosen isolation with a fierce and uncompromising devotion. Their arrows speak a simple truth, that not every shore needs to welcome strangers, that not every culture needs to be catalogued and explained. They are the ultimate islanders, surrounded not just by water, but by their own unwavering will to remain themselves. The Indian government, learning from centuries of contact that destroyed rather than enriched, now protects these tribes with laws as strong as coral reefs. Visitors are forbidden, researchers kept at distance, the islands wrapped in legal buffers that respect the Andamanese right to choose their own pace of change. Yet questions linger like morning fog. How long can complete isolation survive in a connected world? What happens when the young grow curious about the lights they see from passing ships? How do you preserve not just people, but their right to preservation itself? In the depths of the Andaman forests, where cicadas sing the same songs their ancestors heard when the pyramids were young, these questions find their answers not in words, but in the simple, profound act of continuing to exist, wild, free, and utterly themselves. Palawan tribes. Where the Philippine archipelago trails into the South China Sea like scattered prayers, Palawan Island stretches long and green, a sanctuary where two ancient peoples have written their stories in stone, river, and root. The Batak and Tagbanua do not merely live on this island paradise, They are woven into its very soul, their histories as intertwined with the land as vines around ancient trees. In the limestone heart of Palawan, the Batak people move through forests that seem untouched by time itself. They are the honey hunters, the gatherers of precious almantili resin, the keepers of forest pharmacies where every leaf holds healing potential. Their lean-tos appear and vanish like morning mist, temporary shelters for nomadic hearts that follow the seasons of fruit and game. The Batak speak to the forest in whispers, taking only what they need, leaving only footprints that rain will soon erase. Their children learn the names of 1,000 plants before they learn to count, understand the language of birds before they read their first written word. To be Batak is to be fluent in the oldest conversation on Earth, the dialogue between human need and natural abundance. Meanwhile, along Palawan's rivers and coasts, the Tagbanua have carved a different but equally profound relationship with their island home. They are the agriculturalists, the fishing masters, the builders of rice terraces that climb mountain slopes like staircases to the sky. Their villages pulse with the rhythm of planting and harvest, of ceremonies that mark the turning of seasons and the blessing of crops. The Tagbanua understand water as scripture. Their rituals honor the spirits of streams and springs. Their governance systems protect watershed forests with a devotion that makes modern environmental laws seem like pale imitations. They have managed their landscapes sustainably for centuries, proving that indigenous wisdom and ecological balance are not just compatible, but inseparable. Both peoples face the pressures that modernization brings to paradise. Tourism discovers their pristine beaches and underwater cathedrals. Mining companies probe their mountains for minerals. Palm oil plantations eye their forests with calculating hunger. Young Batak and Tagbanua find themselves torn between the ancient paths of their ancestors and the bright promises of the modern world. Yet something endures. In the morning mist that rises from Palawan's rivers, in the evening calls of hornbills returning to roost, in the quiet confidence with which an elder identifies an edible plant or predicts the weather, the spirit of these island peoples flows on, as persistent as the streams that have carved their beloved mountains, as enduring as the coral reefs that protect their shores from the endless sea. Marquesans. In the far reaches of French Polynesia, the Marquesas rise steep and green from deep Pacific waters, valleys clinging between cliffs and sky, waterfalls tumbling like silver ribbons to the sea. Here, isolation shaped a proud people whose roots run as deep as the volcanic stone beneath them. Their ancestors were master navigators, crossing thousands of miles, guided by stars, swells, and bird flights, bringing with them breadfruit, taro, pigs, and stories. In this remote world, these gifts evolved into something distinctly Marquesan. Tattoos became living records, intricate patterns etched by tau-a-tatau, masters who carry ancestral wisdom in ink and scar. Stone tikis stand as guardians, their carved eyes bridging the living and spirit worlds. French colonization brought Christianity, tools, and schools, but also disease, population collapse, and suppression of traditions. Still, the spirit known as mana endured. Today, a cultural renaissance thrives, dances revived, carvings renewed, language spoken alongside French and Tahitian, festivals honoring both elders and breadfruit harvests. The sea now brings visitors as well as fish, and the challenge is balancing connection with sovereignty. Yet in evening light, with frangipani on the wind and fishing boats returning home, the Marquesans remain unmistakably themselves, people whose identity was forged in isolation and who carry it forward with fierce pride. Trobriand Islanders. North of Papua New Guinea, the Trobriand Islands rise from sapphire seas, their villages shaded by coconut palms and breadfruit trees, surrounded by yam gardens tended like green poetry. Here, wealth is measured not by what you keep, but by what you give away, a society built on generosity rather than accumulation. The yam harvest is the year's grand celebration, where men compete to gift the largest yams to their sisters' husbands, proving status through generosity. Women manage household economies with precision, sustaining a culture where sharing is power. At the heart of their fame lies the Kula Ring, a vast ceremonial exchange of shell necklaces and armbands linking hundreds of islands, carrying with them stories, obligations, and honor. Magic infuses daily life spells for love, gardening, sailing, and weather form a spiritual technology for navigating the seen and unseen. Christianity blended into this world without erasing it, creating a faith where Jesus and ancestral spirits both bless gardens and fishing trips. Modern pressures from cash economies to city migration test these traditions, yet the Kula still turns, yam gardens still flourish, and storehouses still empty in dazzling acts of generosity. In night ceremonies beneath star-filled skies, the Trobrianders remain what they have always been, islanders proving that abundance thrives where sharing is the highest wealth. Torres Strait Islanders. Between Australia's northern tip and Papua New Guinea's southern shores, the Torres Strait Islands scatter across crystal waters where two seas meet and cultures merge. Some islands are low coral atolls, others volcanic peaks crowned with rainforest, all bound by tides that connect them to both continents yet belong to neither. The islanders are bridge people, navigators, traders, and guardians of traditions, forged in the space between worlds. The sea is their road, pantry, and spiritual heart. Canoes carved from single logs glide over reefs alive with fish, while master fishermen read currents, clouds, and winds with ancestral precision. On land, gardens yield sweet potatoes and bananas, and hunters track wallabies and pigs. Land and sea are inseparable, both are sacred, both must be healthy for the community to thrive. Art bursts with tropical vibrance, turtle shell masks that turn dancers into spirits, feathered headdresses swaying to the rhythm of drums echoing across the water. Festivals blend ancient ceremonies with Christian celebrations, a legacy of missionaries who arrived alongside 19th century pearling fleets. Islanders became expert pearl divers, but also endured exploitation, disease, and colonial interference. Today, life moves between tradition and modernity, elders telling reef stories under Southern Cross stars, young people splitting time between Brisbane and Thursday Island, iPads in hand but fishing lines ready. Rising seas and warming waters now threaten their homes and food sources, placing them on the front line of climate change. Still, the Torres Strait Islanders remain unmistakably themselves, people whose culture was born from the union of land and sea, isolation and connection, adaptation and deep-rooted tradition. Kiribati Communities. Spread across 3.5 million square miles of Pacific Ocean, the 33 coral atolls of Kiribati are thin ribbons of land, some barely 6 feet above sea level, embracing turquoise lagoons, like liquid sky. The Gilbert, Phoenix, and Line Island groups stretch across 4 time zones, their shores the patient work of coral growth over millennia, creating improbable footholds for human life. On these fragile foundations, the Kiribati have mastered the art of scarcity turned into abundance. Fresh water comes from guarded wells and rain catchments. Soil is crafted from coconut husks and seaweed, and life revolves around the Maniaba-thatched meeting houses where communities decide by consensus and stories drift like trade winds. Their navigators, the Toboki and Anti-Mayaki, read ocean swells, seabird flight, and subtle watercolors to guide canoes across vast, trackless seas. Fishing is both survival and ceremony, with techniques suited to every marine zone, lagoon nets, reef traps, and deep-sea voyages in outrigger canoes that ride swells higher than the islands themselves. Colonial times brought upheaval from British governance to phosphate mining on Banaba, which displaced communities and disrupted traditions. Independence in 1979 created one of the world's smallest yet most scattered nations, where satellite links now connect elders in distant Maniaba across thousands of miles. Climate change looms as the greatest test. Rising seas and stronger storms threaten to erase entire atolls, placing Kiribati at the forefront of global debates on climate refugees and disappearing nations. Yet daily life endures: children playing in lagoons, dancers honoring the sea in community festivals, fishermen reading the swells as their ancestors did. Through it all, the Kiribati remain what they have always been: people of the sea, resilient stewards of a vanishing horizon, living proof that even the narrowest margin between land and water can sustain a thriving culture. Vanuatu tribes. Scattered across 83 volcanic islands, the Vanuatu have built one of the most culturally and linguistically diverse societies on Earth. From the fiery peaks of Tanna to the calm atolls of the Torres group, each island speaks its own dialect, follows its own customs, yet all share custom, the ancestral ways that shape life, like rivers finding new paths to the sea. This is a land born of fire and water, where volcanic slopes meet turquoise lagoons and rainforest cascades tumble into the ocean. People read their environment with ancestral precision, knowing which rumbles signal danger, which seasons bring cyclones, and which soils will nourish taro and kava. On Tanna, the Yakul people still live much as their ancestors did, cultivating gardens with hand tools, hunting with bows, and honoring both volcano and forebears in daily ritual. Over 100 indigenous languages weave Vanuatu's cultural fabric, each carrying its own cosmology and spirit-world relationships. Traditional houses vary with geography: tall, decorated peaks in the north, cyclone-resistant low structures in the south, ceremonial platforms lit by firelight beside the surf. Even the famed bungee jump was born here, on Pentecost Island, as a sacred yam harvest ritual rather than a thrill-seeker's sport. History has brought waves of change. Cargo cults emerged during Vanuatu, blending spirituality with visions of abundance brought by foreign ships and planes. Independence in 1980 united the islands, but also created tensions between custom and modern governance, between local languages and global education. Today, climate change adds new challenges. Rising seas and stronger cyclones threaten both low-lying atolls and volcanic highlands. Yet the essence of Vanuatu life remains. Evening kava circles, Bustling morning markets and children's laughter across the lagoons keep traditions alive. This is a people who turned isolation into innovation, diversity into strength, and who still dance their many dances together to the deep, ancient rhythms of the Pacific. Tuvaluans. On 9 coral atolls, barely 15 feet above the Pacific, the Tuvaluans have built a civilization in the narrow space between sea and sky. The name means 8 standing together, though a 9th island was later added, each a green necklace encircling a lagoon, sustained by coconut palms, freshwater lenses, and centuries of patient cultivation. Masters of maritime minimalism, they navigate vast ocean distances by reading swells, seabirds, and the taste of water. Their knowledge passed through apprenticeships that turned sailors into living maps. The Fatele dance unites entire villages in song, celebrating fish, rain, and life itself. Christianity arrived in the 19th century, merging with ancient respect for sea and sky into a seamless spirituality. Modern life brought unexpected wealth through the sale of their TV domain, funding infrastructure and climate advocacy. But rising seas threaten to erase the land entirely. King tides now flood homes and taint fresh water. Some predict the nation could vanish within decades. Yet Tuvaluans adapt, installing solar panels on homes built to ancestral designs, linking by satellite to other island peoples, and speaking at climate summits as frontline witnesses. In the golden evening light, when the Pacific surrounds them in all directions, Tuvalu endures, guardians of fragile land, living proof that resilience is an art and survival a kind of poetry. Solomon Islanders. Scattered across more than 900 islands in the heart of Melanesia, the Solomon Islands stretch like a broken necklace over waters of shifting blues, turquoise shallows giving way to deep indigo trenches. Volcanic peaks cloak themselves in rainforest, while atolls glisten like white beads adrift in the Pacific. Each island is a world of its own, holding its own language, its own myths, and its own way of moving through time. For thousands of years, Melanesian ancestors have lived in rhythm with these lands and seas. They carved outrigger canoes from single logs, their prows rising like the beaks of birds, built to skim lagoons or cut across open waters under the pull of wind and paddle. Journeys were not only for trade shell money, obsidian, and fragrant nuts, but for news, kinship, and the binding of far-flung communities. Life here is a weaving of earth and ocean. Gardens carved into the slopes yield taro, yams, and cassava, tended with the same care as fishing grounds. Coral reefs give up parrotfish, sea cucumbers, and giant clams, taken according to the unwritten rules of custom ancestral law that governs not only people, but the very tides and forests themselves. The 19th century brought waves of change. European traders, missionaries, and the dark shadow of the blackbirding trade that took islanders to work on faraway plantations. Later came colonial borders, foreign governance, and the global wars that scarred both land and memory. Yet the threads of tradition custom were never severed. Even today, the drumbeat of village life is steady. Communal feasts, bride price exchanges, initiation rites, and dances that tell of ancient voyages and the deeds of spirits who still walk the land. Yapese. Far out in the western Pacific, where the ocean rolls unbroken to the horizon, lies Yap, 4 main islands wrapped in a wide reef, ringed with scattered islets that shimmer like beads on turquoise water. This is the homeland of the Yapese people, a Micronesian community whose roots run as deep as the coral foundations beneath their shores. Life here moves to the measured rhythm of the tides. The mornings begin with the scent of salt and smoke as fishermen return with their catch, the sea still clinging to their skin. In the shade of towering breadfruit and betel nut palms, women weave pandanus mats with hands that know each strand's place, while children chase crabs along the sand, their laughter carried by the wind. Yap is a place where tradition is not a relic, but the framework of life. Villages are arranged according to ancestral law, with meeting houses raised on stone platforms and stone paths polished smooth by centuries of bare feet threading between them. Chiefs still hold authority, their words guiding community decisions, while rituals, chants, and dances carry the memories of those who came before. Even the sea is governed by custom, with sacred fishing grounds whose use is decided by elders, ensuring that life here flows in balance with nature. Yet beyond its beauty and order, Yap is famed for something unlike anywhere else on Earth. Its massive stone money, the Rei. These great limestone discs, some taller than a man and others small enough to carry, are not carved from Yap's own land. Centuries ago, Yapese navigators undertook daring voyages in outrigger canoes, sailing hundreds of miles across open ocean to the distant island of Palau. There, in high cliffs of gleaming limestone, they quarried the stone and shaped it into perfect circles with a hole in the center, then hauled the discs to the shore, loaded them onto canoes, and carried them back across the vast Pacific. The worth of each stone lies not in its size alone, but in its story, who made the voyage, what dangers they faced, and who among them never returned. Some stones bear the memory of storms survived, of foreign shores glimpsed only briefly before turning for home, and once on Yap, they rarely move. If this journey across the world's most remote islands stirred your spirit, let the tide carry your support, leave a like, share it with fellow travelers, and subscribe so you never miss the next voyage. Thank you for watching, and may the ocean's stories stay with you until we sail again.